Hello and welcome to Backchat from the Arc in Headingley. Your panel this week, Gary Schofield, former Great Britain star who used to play a good game. Danny Lockwood, publisher of League Weekly newspaper who talks a good game. And Graham Lovett, Lancashire scribe and radio personality, game for anything. And have a good look, fellas, because this is what the 1D reunion concert will look like in 40 years' time as well. Any kiddies watching. What a fantastic week, as ever, of Rugby League. Challenge Club takes top billing. The Sunday was sensational. Absolutely. No shortage of headlines across the round, Dave. And I think we're going to be discussing whether Hull KR were the result of the round or the Leigh Centurions. But that is the good news story that just doesn't know when to stop, does it? They've got a big trip ahead of them now. But the way they came back against Wakefield was just sensational.
Yes, I think that will be the tie of the round, and certainly how they went about their business there. Other people argue that Hull KR coming back from that massive defeat against Wigan will be the one, but I've got to go with a Championship side beating a Super League side every time. Well, I think as well that's what the Challenge Cup brings, doesn't it? You know, it's still the unique competition for mine in the Rugby League calendar, and I've got to disagree with Graham. The result for Hull Rovers at Wigan, being beat 2 weeks ago by 60-0, the character and the team spirit they showed to go to Wigan, okay, they were playing at Leigh, and to beat an informed Wigan side who the last two games have nilled the opposition, I think that's got to be the game of the round so far. It just brings, again, what the Challenge Cup's all about. But for me, the Championship, what a great day on the Sunday for the Championship, because Featherstone not given much chance at Catalan and very nearly did it. Batley, who were losing quite reasonably at half-time against Widnes, very nearly did it. And of course Leigh. I think the cumulative score on Sunday was Super League 93, Championship 92. What does that tell us? And it wasn't just, I don't think it was just, Dave, the fact that, you know, Leigh, we've seen this coming for a long time now. They're on a sensational run of form, and that confidence that they have, even when they went 22-0 down, to think, we can dig deep here, we can still pull this one out of the hat. I think it shows how bad a team Wakefield are, by the way. But the fact is that Batley are down at 8th in the Championship. Featherstone are 5th. Featherstone are not even sure of making the middle 8s, which is going to be one mouth-watering competition when it comes around. So to go away to 3 bona fide Super League clubs, we can argue a little bit about Wakefield, and produce like they did, I think just shows how right a format we've got this season. And I am really looking forward to the back end when we get some cracking ties. Great advert for the middle 8, isn't it? Great advert. But I think the clue from the weekend is that Batley should get an high pitch down. they should lay an high pitch down, because they're the only side I know who've been really successful going to win this. I'll tell you what as well, when you looked at the two performances from Batley there and you know, Featherstone over at Catalans, if the Wakefield players had showed that sort of character and that spirit, they would have got the result there. But I'm not sorry to say this, but I think the Wakefield performance, certainly that second half, it was gutless, it was shameful, and then Wakefield players need to take a long hard look at themselves, because they had Leigh on toast in that first half. But all credit to Leigh, the spirit what they've got there, the way that Paul Rowley wants them to play. The half-time team talk was quite simple. We keep doing what we know best. And it proved in the second half, but that Wakefield performance, quite clearly, they had a championship. What was it, 22-0 at one stage? 22-0 at one point. 24-6. I think it was 24-6 for Wakefield in the first half and 30 points to 6 for Leigh in the second. That should have been just put to bed, shouldn't it? That should have been just put to bed. I always thought that the difference was going to be, and we saw it actually in the last round when Bradford ran Hull KR close for an hour and then fell apart in the last 20 minutes. And you would think that extra fitness of a Super League team, you know, that battle-hardened approach. Why should they be extra fit? Would count. Why should they be extra fit? Because I mean, Bradford are full-time, Leigh are full-time. They're playing at a faster pace, at a better level of competition, week in, week out. Okay, Leigh will get a tough match now and again. They had a pretty tough run, I think. I don't know if it was down at Sheffield that took them close. Bradford in the first game of the season, but they're playing games where they're blowing teams away, Dave. So for them to have that extra fitness, resilience, desire in that last 10-15 minutes against Wakefield showed me that is one thoroughly professional club over there. The extra joie de vivre as well. I mean, it's the way they played, wasn't it, that second half? It was a joy to watch, and it looked like it was a joy to play. Scotty, going down the hill at Wakefield, how much of a difference does that make? Because it's obviously played a part in that. Oh, yeah, there's nothing there, Graham, whatsoever. And I think the players themselves have got to take a long, hard look at themselves, you know. Because one thing's going to happen, unfortunately, the coach may lose his job. And at the end of the day, you know, coaches do seem to get the blame for performances. And at times, you can't keep blaming the coach all the time. If you look at the performances Wakefield have put in, since that coming from James Webster 4 weeks ago, OK, he should not have made that. But quite clearly, them players
booked the holidays for the next 8 weeks, thinking, well, we don't really need to play until what, maybe round 23, 24.
Is that when he said? Is that when he said we've got every minute doesn't count?
Every minute doesn't count now. And he's just giving the players, well, I don't need to play now for the next 6 or 7 weeks, but surely them players have got to take pride in their own performance, because at the end of the day, the chairman himself, Michael Carter's doing a great job. You've got to play for the supporters, and unfortunately, you know, the coach may lose his job there, but you can't keep blaming the coach all the time.
But it wasn't just that defeat as well. They've had some woeful other performances. Yeah. I saw them at Warrington 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was a point to a minute for Warrington. 60 minutes, 60-0, and the directors had had enough, and they get up and walk away.
And do you know what, Graham and Danny as well, quite clearly, some of these players, these Wakefield players, you know, they're playing Super League because nobody else wants them in Super League. So if they are looking from a point of view, because they are going to be in that £1 million game, I would say, maybe if they're not relegated before. So them players, if they want to keep in Super League and want to put themselves in the shop window, well, I'll tell you what, they better start to perform, because if not, they are going to be all of them are going to be playing Championship Rugby League next year.
At the time we're talking, we don't know the future of James Webster, but all the indications are that he is set to leave Wakefield one way or another. Who takes over at Wakefield if that is the case?
There'll be plenty of hats in the ring, because they're always
it's a club that just seems to be.
Well, because there's guys on the job.
There's that few jobs come up for offer in the game, so there are people out to work who are going to. We can name
Brian Noble will get a mention, because he usually does. You know, would Willie Poachin look to be stepping up at his old club? I actually think, one name out there would be Francis Cummins.
Good call, Good call.
Who to me is a young man with a bright future, who did a great job, I thought, in terrible circumstances at Bradford. Finds himself on the margins now. He's a West Yorkshire lad. He's got great connections across the junior game in terms of talent spotting for Wakefield going forward. And they're going to need something real quick.
And Bobby Goulding as well. He's going to be in there, isn't he?
Bobby will fancy it.
Paul Cook, he's just lost his job at Doncaster there. You know, he's got the qualities. He did an excellent season with Doncaster last year. So, but Glenn Morrison at Dewsbury. But my question would be, who would want to take over Wakefield now to respond to the players the way they are playing? Because quite clearly, if Webster does lose his job, well, he's not going to be the coach who takes us down. It's going to be on somebody's CV if Wakefield do lose their Super League.
Is there anyone in house who can take over a caretaker?
Well, Lee Gilmore's there at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah.
So
I disagree in that whoever gets the job, I don't think it's that poisoned a chalice now as it would have been at the beginning of the season, knowing you've nothing to play with anyway.
Damage has been done.
The damage has already been done. You're almost, if you like, if you save them, you are the saviour. If you don't, well, then you've earned your shot next year to come back first time straight back.
There'll be an assistant coach somewhere in the game, in Super League, who would fancy it. Sure, never mind the people who are out of work, but there'll be an assistant somewhere who would fancy his chances.
I'm going to throw a name in the hat. What about Gary Thornton? Because he did a really good job at York. He was coach of the year, wasn't he, in Championship 1, and then left that club for whatever reason. Knocking around, looking for a job.
He built up the Batley team as well, that John Keir has moved on to the next level. Don't forget John Keir as well. You know, he had great times and had great memories at Wakefield, did John. Whether it's too late in his career, I don't know. But I do think that they need something to shake them up before they come down to the middle 8 mix.
That would be a safe pair of hands, Kiri, wouldn't it not?
Yeah, he would, and he knows the organisation, he knows the people, he knows the game. He can get the best out of lads that have pretty much given up within themselves. And I think that's what they need right now.
Well, you talk about giving up there, Danny, but quite clearly, if a new coach does come in, we don't know yet what the position is with James Webster, but quite clearly, the player witness next week and they get that victory, it just tells you that the players want to play for James Webster.
And there's some quality in there. I mean, whatever the attitude is, there's Grand Final winners, there's Challenge Cup winners, there's Aussie Grand Final winners.
A fortnight is a long time in politics and rugby, David. And 2 weeks ago, I was questioning Hull KR's professionalism after that drubbing at Wigan.
Yeah.
And how quickly can that turn around? And I thought those players went out there, things went against them early on when they lost so heavily at Wigan, and I thought their heads went down, but then we saw them this weekend, completely different set of men. Okay, they had Terry Campese back, they had Maurice Blair, and they had Mantelana come back and absolutely put it to Wigan. But it just shows what can be done inside a player's head when they've got it screwed on right.
You've got two issues though. You mentioned about, are they good enough? There is class in that Wakefield side, and are they not playing? That is a dreadful thing to have to think about, that they're not playing for the club, they're getting professionals, they're not playing for the coach. Two issues there: are they good enough and not playing for the coach? I don't think that they have that they're skillful enough. I don't think they are good enough.
I tell you what as well, I think maybe we're going away a little bit from what a great result for Lee. Because it just shows in that second half performance, that self-belief what they've got, the way that the coach wants them to play, and I say that the quality of that team, they've got some great team spirit, but also as well the individual players who could come up with something different, the way that Paul Rowley wants them to play, and hey, would he?
A chip and a chase.
Chip and a chase. But I mentioned a few weeks ago, which I've been a little bit got criticised for, that Paul Rowley being part of the England setup. I'll tell you what, he's doing a great job there at Lee, so I think we should give a lot of praise to Lee, the way they came back against the Super League opposition. Doesn't matter how bad Wakefield are, and I think it just shows that Lee, if they do get promoted, they're ready for Super League.
Yeah, they looked a well-coached side, didn't they?
Yeah.
And obviously what he said at half-time made a difference as well, and they looked so well-coached.
The Tom Armstrong try that came off the Ryan Briley chip and chase, and looked in the record, 1954 Gary Schofield, apparently the last time that happened in a Challenge Cup tie, but it was a joy to watch.
You're always full of compliments, Mr. Woods, but yeah, it's great to see just playing, play what you see, that initiative, the belief that Paul Rowley puts into his plays to play off the cuff rugby league. Great to see, and I'll tell you what, I want to see more of it, not just from Lee or anybody else who's playing professional again, but some of the Super League clubs, by playing a bit off the cuff, stop playing robotic board rugby league and let's entertain a little bit.
Yeah, and the draw has thrown up war. It could have been better, I reckon. Hull Kingston Rovers against Catalan, Hull against Leeds, St Helens against Widnes, Warrington against Lee. Do you fancy Lee? Have Lee got any chance at Warrington to carry this run on?
It'd be a brave man who said that they didn't. Would my money be on them? No, it wouldn't, because the odds are always with a top four. A bona fide top four Super League team. They came very close to turning Leeds over last year, did Lee? But I think they ambushed them a little bit. They were a bit of a surprise package. I don't think Leeds took them as seriously as any team will take Lee now, because everybody will do their homework. He will not be resting players for that game, won't Tony Smith? He'll have the full hand of his top players out against Lee, and I think that your money would have to be on Warrington.
I'll go along with that, but another thing we can't forget, of course, is that in a pre-season friendly, Lee beat a very, very strong Wigan side as well. So we burn that in the... But I go along with Dan. I think that Smith will be... He'll have them all ready, raring to go. I wish
Two games from Wembley.
Yes, quite. So important.
I mean, that's the thing about this structure, isn't it? I remember when Wigan got to the final a few years ago, and I think they beat London in the semi-final, didn't they? And the whole run through to the final, they didn't have any real tough teams to beat until they're actually in the final itself. That can not happen again now. It's very unlikely to happen with this structure. You look at the 4 quarter-finals and they're all classy games, really tough games.
They are classy games, and we mentioned Warrington Lee. If you mentioned there, Danny, if Warrington don't give them that full respect, they will get turned over. Lee will be going there with plenty of confidence. They won't change the style of play. The forwards will get stuck into that Warrington forward pack. So if Warrington don't play for that full edge, I think there could be a surprise there. I'm tipping Lee to beat Warrington.
Yeah.
I think that the new format you speak about there has brought an unintentional seeding process into the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
Whereas the stronger sides, they come in later on, and this is quite right. I don't think he intended to produce this, but it is producing it.
But I think it was one of the vagaries that we had of going to the new system. Too many games, too many league games, which we have anyway. They had to find some spare weekends somewhere, so leaving out the top 8 from Super League from last year until this stage has at least avoided the situation where you get a Saints and Leeds drawn in the round of 32, and you could have, as we have had in recent seasons, teams effectively getting a soft draw, sneaking through to the semi-final like London did, and being completely out of the depth. This looks like it is going to throw up at least 2 heavyweight semi-finals, and I think that's what the game wants to see from its Premier Cup competition.
Because I mean, if Lee do get there, if Lee do represent the Championship in the semi-finals, they deserve to be there. It's not because they have an easy draw.
No soft draws.
We've had it, and well, I think the semi-final will be Hull Kingston Rovers, Leeds, Saints and Leeds. That's going to be my semi-final. That's my semi-final.
Right.
Let me get my wallet out and have a few quid this guy.
I don't think
everything he says comes true.
When they got this new format in for the Super 8s coming out, I don't think they envisaged that this would happen. Certainly I didn't. This has come as a complete surprise to me when I see...
It's a pleasing surprise.
It is. It's very pleasing. We don't want another Wigan and Broncos effort like we had at Lee a couple of years ago, 70-odd nil, 2,500 people in the joint.
Yeah.
And this is a real positive that's come out of the new makeup.
And what an opportunity for Hull Kingston Rovers. Gareth Walker was sitting with us a few weeks ago and talking about Hull KR as being this year's Castleford, and in that respect they could be this year's Castleford. Home draw against Catalan is possibly the easiest draw. I mean, not easy, but the easiest draw.
Well, we know that Catalans just don't travel well, do they? And I'm not sure that the cup means as much to them as it does to certainly the Craven Park faithful. There's going to be they're going to be looking at Wembley and thinking we've got a real chance here. Nobody gave them a chance, quite honestly, on Friday at Wigan. It was the worst Wigan performance I have seen. I don't know where that came from because they've looked like world beaters, but suddenly they fell off a cliff. We'd given George Williams the kiss of death because the kid just couldn't get into the game. Terry Campese made him and Maddie Smith, look like novices, quite frankly. And although it was a classic, exciting cup tie, it wasn't the best game of rugby football you'll ever see. But Hull KR got through that one entirely on merit, and they are dangerous.
Great matchup as well, because Campese against Carney, old mates from Canberra, they know each other well. They're still, still very, very good mates. And everybody said Carney's going to be the man of steel this year. Campese is making a very good shout for that. It's going to be mouthwatering just to watch those.
You just mentioned it there, Dave, and I say Carney, just his injuries from that point of view, but Campese so far, he has to be the front runner so far for the man of steel. He's been absolutely outstanding. He hasn't come for the holiday. The pressure's been put on him by being made captain, by being the #1 player, and he really is showing the faith in the Hull.
And he's already signed a contract extension.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
He came over a one-year deal and very soon.
I know one or two clubs are looking at him. I won't say one nearest to my heart, but they were looking at him. Yeah. And I know the stats came back that is defensively, you'll know this better than me, defensively he wasn't quite on the mark. But he makes up for it so much in other departments.
Graham, let me tell you this as an ex-halfback. As an ex-halfback, and even with halfbacks playing, don't worry about tackling, that's not your job. You've got forwards to do all your tackling. So I'm not interested in halfbacks who can't tackle. Halfbacks create and they win games.
Gary Schofield never made a tackle in his life, which is why he's still got those pretty boy legs. We're back with more in just a moment's time. Welcome back. So the Challenge Cup is out of our system for a few weeks now. We've got about a month or so before we return to that glorious old competition. But one big event coming up over the next few weeks is the Magic Weekend. Are we excited by this? We're looking forward to it. Is it a good idea? Should we have scrapped it?
It's a great idea. I like the fact that it's in Newcastle. I don't know if it has a long-term future, given all the other pressures on the calendar, both from international games and indeed if we're ever going to bring the Challenge Cup back to May to where it belongs, Dave. But in terms of a marketing project, which I think is the main idea of it from the RFL's point of view, certainly so far on ticket sales, Newcastle looks to be working. I think they've got 52,000 tickets sold already. They're looking at the highest Saturday attendance that they've ever had, and they say that 25% of those ticket sales have come from new customers, if you like, up in the northeast.
So that's 52,000 over the weekend.
So far sold, yeah. So
that's not too bad.
And it seems favoured towards the Saturday at the moment. I don't know if that's about the fixtures or just people's personal preferences, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I just don't think long term there's a place for it in a competition like ours.
You always get the feeling it's fabricated, don't you? You think it's been made for a certain thing, and as Danny said, it might have run its time. I'm not sure, but I'm looking forward to going to Newcastle. I enjoyed Cardiff when we were down there. Enjoyed Man City, but Newcastle's something different. Certainly, the people of the North East have taken to it. You see all the publicity, and a club like Widnes relating to Newcastle with the black and white. It's a fantastic idea, but the length of time it has to run, I ain't too sure.
Yeah, the hospitality from the North East people is going to be great, but I guess we look.
That's all you're bothered.
Oh, you know that, Gary?
That should be great. Yeah, never mind the Rugby League, but I guess what the RFL are looking for, they sold 52,000 tickets out, and they'd want 52,000 all at once, won't they? But you won't get support staying in there. Say for instance, St Helens staying from watching Wigan fans and Leeds watching Castle, what have you. So that's the implication of what they're looking for. But yeah, it's a good city, but the full gate is what we want to see, but we aren't going to see that, Dave, are we?
Yeah, no.
Do you think it's fair that Leeds and Wigan should play 3 times? The fixture, how it's worked out, always seems a little bit, as I say, fabricated to me.
Well, they've tried everything, haven't they? They've tried the derby idea, which is still pretty loosely kind of adhered to, although Wigan and Leeds is nobody's idea of a derby. You can't have a derby where a French team are involved. Although when London used to be in it,
was ideal for those
you
two.
could kind of make it. But the fact is that if every minute's going to count, which is the credo for this
year,
word,
Yeah.
it clearly is thrown out the window as far as magic is concerned, because it is patently unfair fabricating a fixture list just to suit the marketplace.
Do you remember a few years ago when it was always Wigan and St Helens? And one season they were drawn against each other in the Challenge Cup. I think they played each other in the playoffs. They had a pre-season friendly. There's about 7 times that these two clubs came together in one season. You know?
Yeah.
So that Danny's argument about the derby seems to go out the window a little bit.
One of the big draws of keeping fans in this time is the top 8 and middle 8s, though, isn't it? Because you might have a game that doesn't involve your club directly, but we're getting to the business end of the season, and actually you want to stay and cheer on a certain team, because if they win, it might mean your team stay in the top 8.
I don't think that's going to
You
happen.
know,
No, that's
you're
not
such a cynic.
that's not going to happen. That's
No.
not going to happen, because let's have a look at the last fixture of the Magic Weekend. It's going to be Castleford against Wakefield. Well, we're talking about every minute counts. Well, Wakefield are giving up there, so we're looking at.
Cass could be in that shake-up.
No, Castleford will make the top 8 without a doubt. Yeah, they'll make the top 8. They've got 2 good players. Consistency is a problem, but no, the Cass will be all right for the top.
Who's your bottom 4? Who's your bottom 4 then? Who's your bottom 4 at this stage?
Wakefield, Salford, Widnes.
Catalans, Scoy?
Between Catalans and the black and whites, dare I say that. But Radford at the moment, they're on a run of 6 out of 7, so they're hitting the form. The big name players, they're under the pressure. But yeah, throw the Catalans in the mix without a doubt. If Carney doesn't start performing, then they could struggle.
I think as long as teams have got to go across the channel to Catalan, they're always in with a chance of winning all their own games, you would have thought.
Yeah.
It's just on the travel.
So just a straw poll, who's your bottom 4 at this stage? Your two's bottom 4?
Wakefield, obviously.
Yeah.
Although OKR are everybody's second favourite team now, if you like, for what's going on, I think they might be there or thereabouts. And despite of what we've been saying, Widnes, you've got to count Salford as well. It's going to be tight for that 4th spot. Tight for the 4th spot.
Right.
This is where the Challenge Cup influence comes in a little bit, I think, David. You know, because if Hull KR, for instance, are fully focused on that and take their eye a little bit off the ball, and we've seen that they can do that, they might be in danger. Wakefield obviously are gone. I would say at the moment, Widnes and Salford, because they just can't find any consistency. They're favourites to be down in that bottom 4, and then I think you can perm 1 from 3.
Yeah. Having said that,
but Castleford really didn't show up well at the weekend, and he says they've got to mature and they've got to find themselves to Darryl Powell. So as much as Scoy says they're an absolutely bang-on top 8 team, and I'd like to think so because they were one of my favourite clubs, I think that they're still in danger of slipping back a little bit.
You've got to bear in mind as well, we're talking about Catalan playing at home. The Widnes pitch is a big factor for their own games.
Yep.
The good teams go there and they don't like playing on it, so that is a factor as well.
But they can't win away from home,
no,
can they? They can't win away. And a
big
big test for Widnes, because I'm sure when the fixtures came out for Dennis Betts this weekend, they would have penciled that in as a 2-pointer. We know that Wakefield are going, but if Wakefield do get a new coach, there's going to be a reaction from there. So it's going to be testing time, but for Widnes going away again, where they go to Wakefield this weekend.
I think another point of OKR is if they do lose Campese for any length of time, or the other half-back or the star players, they've not much to come in there. So that could be a telling factor.
You know, Albert Kelly was out at the weekend, wasn't he? And they put in his good pal Bobby Blair to kind of shore up that defence, and he did a great job of it. So, but those two would sit very comfortably at half-back if they were asked to. But Kelly and Blair. But you know, Campese's not showing any signs of being fragile. I still fancy Hull KR to be in the shake-up.
But they've already got an extra game, haven't they, because of their Challenge Cup involvement, because they came in the early round. They're going to have another extra game, which, as you say, some of those other clubs, they might have a couple of midweek games to play that could really impede their progress this year.
You'd like to think not, David. You'd like to think that they've got enough strength in depth, enough resources to cope with it, and that they are professional enough to see that they're getting to the business part of the season now. They can't afford a weekend off like they seem to have against Wigan in the league. And I think if Campese gets his way and he's at the helm, he'll give them the guts and the leadership that they need.
It's the personnel who go down injured, isn't it? That's the key with OKR. Danny says they have resources. I don't know how they would fill for for the two half-backs or the winger. That worries me about them.
I'll tell you what I know, we're talking about the bottom four, aren't we? Who's going to finish in the top four? Because the top three, we were looking at Leeds, Wigan and St Helens. Who's going to get the fourth spot, you know, to finish in the top four? You look at the way Huddersfield at times, they're inconsistent. People were talking about Catalans with the Khan influence there. So who is going to finish?
Well, Warrington.
Do you think Warrington will finish fourth, do you?
Yeah.
But
they're inconsistent.
But they have been so hit and miss, haven't they?
Everyone's been inconsistent.
I think you name the top four, though, with Warrington in those three.
The Leeds were 6 points clear a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and suddenly, you know,
St Helens would have gone unbeaten all season.
St Helens would have gone unbeaten all season.
And of course, Luke Walsh, you know, China Bones, he's out again for another month or so, clean out operation on his ankle. There is a little bit of last man standing, and I mean, all of a sudden we were writing the epitaphs for Kevin Sufield's career just a couple of weeks ago. The old maestro comes back at the weekend, absolutely put it to the Huddersfield Giants. Liam Sutcliffe, you know, gets a rest that he probably needed because Leeds have been a little bit wobbly. Yeah. And if you're looking at the strongest squad that's going to finish, you know, with the wind in the sails, right now you're looking at the Leeds Rhinos as being, you know, the strongest sort of 19-20.
It's only the back end of March where you were looking at Wigan to play Lee in the mid-late.
Yeah.
And when his job was dicey.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks ago, the form team of the competition.
We're talking about Huddersfield again, because I've questioned from a point of view, can they handle the pressure? The forwards themselves at times, when the pressure's on, they're a bit soft, they get found out, you know, so can Huddersfield not challenge for that top four again? Because for the last 2 or 3 seasons, when they have got in pressure games, quite simply, they bottled it, and Leeds got stuck into them on Saturday and again, the bottled
when those
the pressurised game.
When those big lads get over the top of the opposition, then Brough just weaves his magic, doesn't he? When they don't, and they didn't, all of a sudden there isn't a plan B.
And one or two other players are off form as well, aren't they?
Well, the point I'm saying is, when the pressure games are on, they fall down badly, don't they?
Yeah. I've never been really convinced by the Huddersfield back five, really. And I thought that they were a real letdown for them.
Yeah, it was. And you could see the frustration on Danny Brough, because we've been in half-back myself. You know, your forwards are making the hard yards, and it is pretty tough. But
and then you've got, you know, I mean, Scott Griggs is a hot and cold player at the best of times, and he was ice cold, wasn't he, at the weekend?
He had a poor game. He had a poor game for that boy.
He gave up a couple of tries, and then, and you know, I know we'll be talking about England as we go through the season, but I thought Zach Hardacre had a tremendous game.
He's looking absolute
Sinfield
class,
got man of the match, and because he controlled the game, did Kevin. But I thought Zach Hardacre had an absolutely stellar performance at fullback. And you know, there was that one occasion when Huddersfield had a little bit of a sniff of getting back in it, and Griggs backed up and should have sailed under the sticks. And Hardacre turned round and not only caught him, but turned him over, turned him turtle, and it was a tremendous piece of fullback play.
It's a great comparison there with the Huddersfield back seven, and the Leeds back seven, rough apart, and how different they are, how different they were in that game. Fantastic, the three quarters.
But again, quite simply, the master was back, wasn't he? His game man management was sensational. His awareness, his vision, his kicking. Sinfield was back, and Leeds, quite simply, looks a different team again.
Why do you think he brought him back?
Well, quite clear they was losing. They weren't playing well. Sutcliffe, again, again, it's consistency performance. We all know what a quality player is, but sees that quality performance against St Helens, fell down. Sinfield wasn't playing. Kevin came back and just showed still.
You need
a quality player.
You need that extra little bit of resource, and I don't know that we can have that. As indeed Saints haven't. Well, you know, Saints have struggled at times when Walsh isn't in there. And John Wilkin, model professional. But he is nobody's idea of a halfback, is he?
Well, you'd think that about Sean O'Loughlin, but Sean O'Loughlin was never in the game against. And he's
had
a long spell off, and I thought his timing was just completely out.
And I think with that performance as well, fellas, Leeds are the holders of the Challenge Cup. They put the marker down there on Saturday, and I tell you what, for mine, Leeds will return the Challenge Cup.
So we've got players going down injured, and we've got big games coming up. We've got referees going down injured. We might not have any referees left. Never mind Magic Weekend. We might not have any referees left to referee normal weeks. I
thought we were going to have 2 referees in a game.
We're lucky to have 1. I think it's like, does anyone know the rules? Come on, bring your whistle. Phil Bentham hamstring injury. George Stokes ankle injury. I think it's Salford the other week. Tim Roby's gone off to Australia. It's a crisis.
Yeah, well, Thierry Alibert packed in. Ashley Klein went back. Steve Ganson and Ian Smith hung the boots up.
Billy Thompson's not around anymore.
Billy, you know, where's Sergeant
Bring him
Eric
back.
Clay when you want him? I mean,
Eric Clare, that would be a good one to go
the
by.
ironic thing here, Dave, of course, is that at the time when the best referee in the game, Cal Kirkpatrick, wasn't willing to go full-time, we gave him the heave-ho. And now...
Danny, did you think he was the best referee in the game?
I'm going to come in on that one, Scott.
Did you think Kirkpatrick was the best?
How do you judge? I sit here in awe of these people who every week and say he's the best referee. How do you judge referees?
Because we haven't seen him. Because we haven't seen him for quite a while. He has not had a bad game in rugby league.
Correct. You judge a referee when they don't get noticed in the game.
Yeah.
But also, another question we talk about referees: is it a competition between them who can shout the loudest when they're on television?
Who can coach as well, Scott? They do the coaching.
It's getting ridiculous.
Well, I don't like the first name habit. I hate it when they're talking to them with using their nicknames and the first names. You know, I think that takes away a little bit of the old vestige of the man in the middle being the absolute boss, because they all sound like pals, but they'll all be on first name terms when we're down to 4 full-time referees, which is what we are at the minute.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's going to be doubling up.
It is a serious problem.
We're talking about Magic Weekend, and you know, it's going to be last man standing.
Yeah.
Anybody fancy a game?
They brought Tony Brown in to recruit youngsters. I don't know how that's going.
Yeah, well, Ben Thaler's got that job now as well. Ben Thaler's got the job to try and get it. We talked about this in recent weeks. But, I mean, we've talked about Lee Radford coming back for the Hull Derby a couple of years ago, putting his boots back on, and Martin Gleeson possibly, and Watson at Salford this last week. We could genuinely see Ian Smith and Steve Ganson pulling the boots
Stuart Cummings.
Yeah.
Bring Stuart Cummings back.
God.
No.
So why was he the best referee? How did you come up with that, Danny? To be honest,
I just thought I thought at the time that he certainly got more Challenge Cup finals and grand finals at the time. It was you could take your pick, Scoey, on who's the best referee from any 1 week out of 2, can't you?
I agree.
Sounds like Kirkpatrick was good copy to me.
It was Silverwood. It was Silverwood for a while, and then Bentham was the blue-eyed boy. And yet they could all have off games just like everybody else. You know, James Child been taking a little bit of stick, and he certainly got it from Kieran Cunningham last week over that game down in the south of France. Although I think James Child has been a much improved official from the baptism of fire he had a couple of seasons back. And I actually thought down in Catalan as well, he was let down by his touch judges. But the fact is, when you're down to your bare bones, when you're down to 4, somebody's got to have the whistle in the middle of the park, Scoey. And right now, that is the bigger problem than how good they are.
I'll agree. I'll tell you what, I'll agree with that. Just imagine though, at the Magic Weekend, 2 of them get injured. What are we going to do? It could be quite a serious problem, couldn't it?
You've got your boots, mate. Your hamstrings are in good shape.
Is the referees' corps, are they not younger than what they used to be? I look at, you know...
No, we're getting older.
Is that what it is?
They're like policemen, yeah.
When
the referee looks young, it shows you how old we are.
But I just thought that there were young ones coming through, whether the Super League material yet, I don't know.
I'll tell you what,
look at Turley at least. Young Turley.
You mentioned the referees, but I wouldn't be able to carry that backpack. They look like teenage turtles, don't they? With them silly cameras on the head, teenage turtle backpack on. I wouldn't be able to carry that around, would you, for 80 minutes?
Well, the players being mic'd up, you'd be all right with a mic on you when you were playing.
Just like referees get better because we've not seen them for a while. Gary Schofield's based his entire career on the fact that he's not played for the last 20 years. We think he was a good player. We'll be back talking about all things Australia in just a short while, including, of course, State of Origin. It's not that far away now. Well, welcome back to the third part of this week's Back Chat from the Arc in Headingley. And as ever, as is our tradition, as you'll know if you watch every fortnight, the final third of the programme, we're going to concentrate on all things NRL, and not just NRL this week, but of course, State of Origin. It's on the horizon, coming over the hill, this time next Wednesday.
Well, it's back, and certainly from an English point of view, we love watching it, don't we? Because the intensity of it. But yeah, the way that the Australians, certainly in the Test series against New Zealand, it looks like the big three in Cronk, Cameron Smith and Billy Slater seem to be a little bit off form, but they seem to be getting that back for Melbourne. Lale of Origin, and as we all know, with the superstar in Greg Inglis. So yeah, mouth-watering again. New South Wales, they're the holders. But Mal Meninga and the boys, they'll be looking to get that crown back. Yeah, first time they've not had it for a while, so they need to get it back off New South Wales. And we saw that barometer check, didn't we? The Test match against New Zealand, when we thought this is the ageing Australian side going over the hill. The backbone of that side is the backbone of the Queensland. Yeah, and I don't know if that tells us about the state of the Australian game generally, that they don't have that much talent coming through. But certainly Mal Meninga, as Scoy said, has put his faith in all the usual suspects. In fact, even more than that, he's brought back someone like Justin Hodges,
who we kind of thought was past his sell-by date. He's got Darius Boyd back on the wing. Josh Maguire is an up-and-comer who will have an impact in this series for sure. But beyond that, it is the same old, the backbone of the Kangaroos team. For New South Wales, well, they've not been able to settle on a pair of half-backs for the last 2 or 3 years, Woodsy, but they've brought Mitchell Pearce back from Roosters. They've left his Roosters teammate James Maloney behind.
Yeah.
He's going to be partnering with Trent Hopkinson this time from the Bulldogs. It'll be interesting to see how they work, because if they fit well, New South Wales have got it elsewhere around the park.
Because he likes to go with a club combination at halves, doesn't he?
We've seen that in the past. This time, you know, Pearce was completely out of the picture for last season. But I think, you know, such has been the nature of the NRL competition this year that nobody's got a half-back pairing that's tearing it up. Probably the form half-back in the entire competition is our very own Gareth Widdop.
Yeah.
And if you want another one, you'd have to look at New Zealand Warriors Sean Johnson. So arguably, the star names from the NRL this year aren't going to be playing in Origin. Although don't be kidded that that's going to take anything away from the Blood and Thunder that we'll be seeing next week.
Yeah. Well, that's the ideal point, the great point of the Blood and Thunder, but it looks like two ageing squads, two ageing sides coming together. And sooner or later, they're going to have to start picking youngsters, bloody youngsters, bringing them in. Same as for the national side, the Kangaroos. And they've learned that lesson, surely, after New Zealand played so well against them.
We've been mentioning, you know, players playing for coaches. Certainly from the Australian point of view, have the players had enough of Tim Sheens? You know, because quite clearly, can he still get the motivation out of them players? Because if you looked at the performances, they look, you know, as though the enthusiasm's not there at times. I'm not saying there's no pride in playing for the Kangaroos, but have the players had enough of Tim Sheens and they need somebody fresh to come in?
Do you think, Scotty, that there is still within the Australian psyche more of an emphasis on Origin and that they get up for that more than they do from playing the boys against the pond?
That's a problem with Australian and international rugby league, and it always has been. They're more intent on that than coming over here playing us, or indeed playing the Kiwis.
Well, I think it just shows the disrespect they're showing to the international calendar, because they're not playing another test match now until the following 12 months against the Kiwis, and then obviously the Four Nations. So it just shows you the disrespect they show for the international game.
If this was a test match trial, which, you know, allegedly it is, then they would be bringing in different players, wouldn't they? This is the chance to actually try. Because as you said, they're not going to be playing at international level again. The only chance they've got to put these combinations together would be at Origin.
Well, they've got the 3 games, haven't they? They've got this one in Sydney, then they go to Melbourne, and then the third Origin up in Brisbane. So you would think somewhere along the line that they'd be using them as trial games.
Well,
maybe it's a 2-0 either way.
I don't know that they do, Graham. I mean, when they have the international weekend, the Anzac Test, you know, you have junior rep rugby, city versus country, this sort of stuff, and they do kind of blood young players there. I think one of the interesting debates that's going on in the NRL at the moment is about qualification for the Origin matches, because, you know, something like 40% of the players are qualified for New Zealand, but a lot of those guys have been born or moved to Australia when they were very young, and they're talking now about, you know, loosening those qualifications so that you don't have to be a Kangaroo player to play in Origin. That would be interesting if that comes to pass in the future. That might be the bit of new blood that Origin itself requires. Although that wouldn't...
Is that a desperation measure?
Well, I think
they're looking at their TV deal.
It's good for the international game.
It's good for the international game, and they're looking to their next TV deal already. And I think they need to see that they see that they need to be innovating, looking at doing things a little bit different, freshening things up. You're looking at that same Queensland team in Origin that's been there for about 5 years, you know. They're going to have to find a way of freshening it up.
Yeah, I mean, the back 7, though, fantastic names in that back 7. But sooner or later, your Billy Slaters, you know, all right, the half-back combination might last a little bit longer, but certainly the 3 quarters, they're certainly coming to the end of the time.
Yeah.
Good for the international game if they did widen selection, because, I mean, we had Adrian Lamb, didn't we, playing for Papua New Guinea and for Origin, but the danger has been in recent years that if you play for either Queensland or for New South Wales, you've got to put your hats in the ring for Australia as well, which means that maybe 1 or 2 of the South Seas countries have lost some real talent over the years.
It is, and even from our point of view, which are totally against, you know, picking Australians for our England team over here on Redundancy. We all know what happened with the Rangiche scenario. We're talking about maybe Cuthbertson this time for England. Hey, listen, you know, we've got enough at times, you know, talent over here. Let's keep it England from there. And my question would be, if you look at this Australian team, it would be a great time for us now, wouldn't it, to play the Aussies?
It's a real shame.
Well, what a great it would be if we had an Ashes series coming up here, because, you know, would this England team, what we on paper, you know, it's pretty good. We don't have a problem with the forwards. There's no problem there with the outside backs. It's just that creativity at half back. But if we was playing Australia this year, would England beat Australia?
We would lose in the last match, in the last test match. That's what would happen.
You know all about that.
Don't be rubbing that in, please.
But I think that it's
that
nice.
happened to me in 6 Ashes series.
It is nice for once to see the Aussies having a bit of a worry and a moan, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and we've said this before, but they're missing out this year. We've got the #1 international team in the world, which they are now, New Zealand, coming over at the end of the year for a 3-match series. You know, I think we should give Red Hall a kicking for not bringing us someone we can beat like the Aussies. You know,
are the Aussies worried about not having international football? They have this arrogance about they complain less about that.
I think there's a growing concern now. I think there's. I mean, we've talked about this before. I
hope there is. You're right, but I just get the feeling that they play their own competition. They play 3 Origin games. They're happy with that.
And can I ask you, because every international team in every sport does it, picks players on residency. So why should England's rugby league team not do that? Every other team does it.
Well, do they want to call us rest of the world then? No,
but everybody does it now.
Why do we have to follow what people do? Why do we have to do that?
Because it's now been legitimised. It's now been legitimised.
Well, I'll tell you what then, I mentioned to Danny and Graham before we came on, realistically then, we could pick any Australian, because as we know, they've been over there, 130 years, they've all got some sort of ancestry from over here. So we can pick
put that very well,
so, yeah, well, so we might as well we'll have Cameron Smith then and Billy Slater. We can pick them all if we want, Dave. No, listen, why do we have to follow and copy everybody else? If McNamara picks the right players, McNamara picks the right players in the right position, keeps them on the field long enough like he should do. That example last year when he took Darryl Clark off and put Brett Ferris on was absolutely clueless. You're taking your best players off and taking them off and bringing them on. No, if he picks the right players, we get some creativity at halfback, then can we beat New Zealand? Yes, we can. Couldn't beat Australia at this moment in time? Yeah, we can, because they're a Dad's Army team. But please, let's keep it English.
Is it not best man for the job? The best man available for the job? Do we not look at that as well?
No, it's not. Simple as that.
I like a principled man, Gary, and you always have been. Can we have an Aussie coach then? I know you're not a great fan of Steve McNamara.
No, we've got enough. We've got enough quality coaches. I've said my point regarding with Paul Rowley. We've even mentioned Macker at Leeds. We Sean Wayne. No. Let's keep it English. Let's keep his own identity.
Okay. And we'll sail along happily at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
You relate it to football. If the England manager's football job came up, Hodgson went, and Mourinho was available, would he not get the job?
I think realistically here we just going away from what we're all about, and quite clearly, you know, we've got to have his own purpose and his own identification. It's as simple as that. Okay, then let's throw it out then. Let's just say, for instance, that Sean Johnson and Billy Slater and Greg Inglis and whatever, they made himself available for England and whatever. Would you pick him? If you was the coach, would you pick him?
Well, Cherry Evans is the pertinent one, because I think it's his mother who is English.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
So he could have played.
Well, I'll tell you what. He's not proved himself at international level yet. You know, they reckon he's as good as Andrew Johns. Anywhere near as Andrew Johns.
Danny mentioned Hodgson earlier on. Now, I remember speaking to Jammer when he first went over there, and he marked McNamara's card for this kid, saying he's available for England. Yeah. But now his origin.
So then, we're going to pick them because they're Australian, got an Australian accent. We've done that over many years, because from the coaching scenario, listen fellas, we've got enough talent over here. We as I've mentioned before, we don't have a problem with the forwards, we don't have a problem with the outside backs. It's just that creativity point of view. And if Widdop puts that into his international form, Matty Smith stands up to say that really, you know, I want to be the number 7. He works it well with Widdop. We could have a say, and if McNamara, he may get replaced at the end of the New Zealand series, get a new coaching, build for the 2017 World Cup, we could be in with a huge shout.
Well, Cuthbertson, as he's mentioned, he's the main one this year, isn't he? Because I think if he was English born and bred, I don't think there'd be any doubts about his possible inclusion in the England squad this year. So should he be included?
Well, he wouldn't have been mentioned in Australian terms. He wouldn't have been in the Origin setup, Dave. He's had a great impact at Leeds because they were a club that needed a player like him.
Yeah.
Is he proven, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of an England shirt? I think he comes quite a bit down the pecking order. I still think that we've got some of the best prop forwards in the world before you get to Adam Cuthbertson. So I don't think that it's a conversation we'll end up having personally. Beyond that, I think that you know, there is still this big conundrum about international qualification. You know where my big bugbear sits between England and Scotland and Danny Brough. And I know you said, you know, you've said in the past that Danny Brough chose to play for Scotland. No, he didn't. Steve McNamara chose not to have him within the England setup. The Aussies are having a conversation now about just how many of their players that are qualified for the island nations, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, are also dual qualified for Australia. And I think that at some point, you know, David Collier, the new chief of the international board, is going to have to sit down and we're going to have a big grown-up conversation about at what point players declare their national identity if we're going to build the international game going forward and not having guys flip-flopping. You know, Petra Sivnasiva, one of the all-time great Australian forwards, appeared in the last World Cup for his home island. I'm not sure that's the way we want to go.
Well,
you know, far be it from me to argue with someone like Scoy, but I'm not sure.
Oh no, please do, please do. We encourage.
Well, I'm not sure we have the talent that Gary thinks we have. Obviously, the forwards, Donny's expressed that we are, but half back, a little bit further back than that, I'm not sure we have the talent, and we could improve if we look elsewhere.
Well, I'll tell you.
Do we not look at the best man for the best?
Well, I'll tell you what will happen. And Danny just said on the point there. If people then want to declare which national team they want to play for, exactly we just mentioned Cuthbertson there, and with all his, you know, his ancestry, whatever you know you want to call it, you will get them because they know themselves. They won't be picked for New Zealand, whoever's New Zealand. They won't be picked for Australia. So what we would be getting second, third, fourth rate Australians who can't make it down there, making them available for our national team. So what ambition then of our lads over here?
But you still
get selected for the.
Will they be the best selections?
No, not for me.
I don't think they make a choice until they have a choice to make. So it would be a question of if you've got a lad like Jack Reed, a lad like Gareth Widdop, you know, consider themselves English by birth.
Well, they are English.
Yeah,
they are English.
But they've played all of the rugby down there.
Well, they're English.
Well, that's fair enough. You know, but they would have had a choice to make at some point if they'd have at that time been good enough for Australia.
I'll tell you what, the Aussies, if Jack Reed and Widdop made himself available for Australia, they wouldn't get picked for Australia.
They wouldn't? No, they
wouldn't pick them because they're English.
David,
well, no, they're not good enough to play. Would they get into the... on a level playing field, would they get into an Australian side?
They wouldn't pick them. I'd say they wouldn't pick them. No, they wouldn't.
David Waite used to sing the national anthem before dinner every evening when he was a small child.
Yeah,
not many English people do that.
Very quietly. Look at the job he did.
We were talking about State of Origin, and you've taken us down a whole different path. But we will be talking about State of Origin next Wednesday, of course, because that's when it's on this very channel. But before that, there are several NRL games to feast your eyes upon this weekend, and these are they. As you can see, Rabbitohs against the Eels at the ANZ Stadium. That's a 10:45 kickoff, live on Friday morning. On Saturday, the one game, Tigers against the Cowboys, Campbelltown Stadium at 10:30. That is live, as is the 7 a.m. Sunday morning kickoff between Canberra Raiders and the Canterbury Bulldogs. And then on Monday, just the one game on the Monday as well, the Newcastle Knights against the Brisbane Broncos at the Hunter Stadium, and that's also live, and that's a 10 o'clock kickoff. So what about the big ones? The State of Origin. Well, first game, we'll all be sitting there glued to our television sets. Wednesday morning, 11 o'clock live. You might have seen it advertised as another time, but let me tell you, that's the time. 11 o'clock live, our coverage starts Wednesday, the 27th of May at the ANZ Stadium. And to put it in your diary, the next two games, Wednesday, the 17th of June in Melbourne, that's an 11 o'clock kickoff as well. And Wednesday, the 8th of July, back at probably the greatest rugby league ground in the world, Suncorp Stadium, for what we hope might be a decider. That's an 11 o'clock kickoff as well. So hope you enjoy those State of Origin games. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you to our panel as well, to Danny, to Graham and to Gary. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.